Hi everyone, hope your 2023 is off to a great start. I'm not sure what order I'm going to put these new videos up on, so I may not have greeted you already for the new year, so Happy New Year if not. I have picked up some great new records recently, and it's been a long time since I've made a new records video. So I'm going to kind of skim the cream of the crop. I'm not going to show you everything I bought recently because really, who has that kind of time? But I'm just going to kind of show you some of the ones that I'm really excited to have found and can't wait to share with you. And this is probably the one I'm most excited about because this has been like my top 2 or 3 most wanted records of all time for a long time. This is one of my favorite album covers of all time. This is Satan is Real. This is the Louvin Brothers. And this album originally came out in 1959. Despite the kind of campy cover, it's not like a jokey record. It's a straight up bluegrass gospel country kind of record in which the brothers take this very, very seriously. But it's kind of become this sort of camp classic just because it's so earnest. They're singing about how all these gospel songs about Satan being real. We have to watch out for Satan, and they just straight up drop some fire and brimstone preaching into some of the songs. And there's even a song on here, I forget what the name of it is, um, where it's about crib death and the baby has died, but it's great news because now the baby's with Jesus and it's fine. And it's just such a wonderfully weird record because it's not intended to be this kitschy camp classic kind of thing, but it has kind of become that over the year, possibly because of this amazing album cover. And I have to do a separate video at some point about the Louvin Brothers because they are one of my rabbit holes recently. I just cannot stop reading about these guys, watching videos about their history. You think some of these other bands like The Doors or some of these other bands that have these movies made about them, and you think, wow, what a crazy messed up story. They need a movie because no one, no band has had a more messed up story than they did. And I have to do a video about them at some point. But what I loved, I bought that off of Discogs. And by the way, the original album is 1959. This is the 2011 repress by A Light in the Attic Records. But even that is getting very, very rare and very, very expensive now. That copy, which is a near mint copy, but it was not sealed, cost almost as much as some of the original 1959 copies I see. I did pay a lot. That's one of the more expensive records I've ever bought, but I really wanted it and I don't regret it. I bought it off Discogs, and the seller took the record out of the sleeve and put it in another sleeve. So I got kind of 2 records because he didn't want the original iconic sleeve to split. And he stuck the record inside this, and it says, "Hello, I have Satan inside of me," because the record was in this. And I thought that was just one of the funniest things I've ever had a seller do to me when I bought a record. So I thought this was amazing, and I just had to share that with you. So here are some other records I've got recently. I'll go through these a little bit quicker. The iconic Flash Gordon soundtrack by Queen. This is a nice copy that does have the original Ming the Merciless poster. Really glad to have this. Here's an upgrade to an album I already had. This is a second pressing of the Dave Brubeck Quartet's Time Out, one of the greatest jazz albums of all time. This is a 1960 pressing. The 1959 pressing, of course, is the original. Could not sound better. What an amazing find. As you may be able to tell by the Louvin Brothers, I've been listening to some country and bluegrass recently, and who doesn't need Will the Circle Be Unbroken by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band in their collection, with just about every surviving Grand Ole Opry era musician chiming in on this. Great album. Here's an album I'm replacing from my 1.0 vinyl collection. This is my favorite Bruce Springsteen album. This is the seldom recommended Nebraska. It's not one of his more popular albums. It was recorded entirely with him and an acoustic guitar and a harmonica on a 4-track cassette recorder. It sounds very amateur. It is as bare bones as it gets. I've always loved the stripped down sound of this album. This has become a stupidly expensive album in a way that, say, Born to Run or Born in the USA has not, because those are much more common. I got a great deal on this one, so I'm happy to replace my copy at last. As I speak these words, we have only recently lost the great Jeff Beck, and I was happy to find this week, Sonny Boy Williamson with the Yardbirds, I haven't even looked. I don't even know if Jeff Beck is on this album, if that's his era of the Yardbirds, but I love Sonny Boy Williamson. This is a reissue, but it's got a lot of great stuff on here, and glad to have it. If you like some good blues, how about B.B. King in London? I have not spun this yet, so I don't know how great it is, but I have a bunch of B.B. King albums, and they rarely disappoint. I'm sure this will be more of the same. Another album I was stupidly excited to find. How about Screamin' Jay Hawkins? I love that cover. It, of course, has I Put a Spell on You on it and many of his other hits. This is a reissue on Edsel Records. It's not a first pressing because I would be wealthy if it was. Still not a cheap record, but one I got. But one I got a great deal on, and I'm glad to have. How about the hardest working man in show business, James Brown? It's a not a mad world. It's a man's world. I always get that mixed up. Have not spun this yet. This is not in pristine condition. The cover is split at the top, but the vinyl doesn't look too bad. And for an early pressing like this, it's not a first pressing. I think it's a second or third. Very good. Glad to have it. This is only my second 10-inch album. I have very few. I have a Dave Brubeck Trio album, which I think I showed in another video a long time ago. I found a Bessie Smith 10-inch. I think it's two. Is it two records? No, it's just one. This is a compilation. It's called Volume 1. A lot of her stuff. I have other Bessie Smith compilations that have most of this material on it, but I don't have it on 10-inch. So what's this on? Jolly Roger Records. So that's a label I don't know. But I got this for pretty cheap, so wanted to pick it up. All right, recently I made a video about a rare Beach Boys 45 that I had found on Candix Records, Surfin' backed with Luau, and I'll put a link up here so you can check that out if you haven't done it. There are not very many Beach Boys studio albums that I still need to complete my collection. There is one, and I'm going to do a separate video about albums I'll never be able to afford, and that's going to be my number one. So a spoiler for that. But I did find a couple of the other things I needed to plug holes in my collection. So my collection is now, again, almost complete. At least I don't really collect all the various compilations or anything like that, because there's millions of greatest hits albums, and who cares? All the songs are on other albums. But here was a big hole in my collection, and it's one that I almost never see affordably. This is called Stack of Tracks, and this is a really weird album because it's basically a karaoke album. And so they just kind of rushed this out, and there's not even really a Beach Boys album. It's just backing tracks. And they included a book here that has the lyrics. If you want to, sing along with your Beach Boys hits, they even have the sheet music for your melody lines, if you can sight read the music. It's pretty cool. Hard to find a nice copy like this with the book. So I paid a little bit more for it, but again, it was one of the last holes in my Beach Boys collection. But maybe even rarer. Actually, I think I paid more for Stack of Tracks than I paid for this. But this is also a rare album. And it's weird because it was really popular when it came out. But it actually is out of print now. This is Still Cruisin' by the Beach Boys. This is a sealed copy. It will not stay sealed because I believe records should be played. But this is actually the album that had the song Kokomo, which was their last #1 hit. And you may remember, of course, Kokomo from the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise. It also had Wipeout, which was a collaboration with the Fat Boys, and they were both big hits. And yet this record is so hated by both the band and fans that Capitol allowed it to go out of print. And it's one of 2 Beach Boys studio albums now that you cannot get on LP, except for if you find an old copy, it's not still being printed. And all the other albums you can still get. So this is not a particularly cheap record, but it's also not a very in-demand record. So it's not as expensive as it could be. However, it is a terrible record. I do have the CD, and it's not good. But this got one more to show you, another Beach Boys item. And then after this, as I say, I only have one major omission from my collection. I have had a mono reissue of Pet Sounds forever, but I've never been able to find a stereo original 66 pressing because they are rare. This was the creative, it was the creative height of the Beach Boys, but it was part of their commercial low point in the 60s, and it's very hard to find an original 1966 pressing of Pet Sounds, especially the duophonic, which is duophonic is like the fake stereo that they were doing at that time. I have just about all of their early albums in duophonic. I think they sound great. I love it. A lot of people obsess over the mono pressing of this. I actually think this is better. I really prefer the duophonic pressing. Um, this is, as you see, it's not a mint cover. It's got definitely some wear, but that also means I didn't have to take out a loan from the bank to buy it. So I actually paid $10 for this. I don't usually say prices, but I'll say I paid $10 for this, and this is a record now. If you look on Discogs, it's $50 to $60 in this condition. So got a really great deal on it. So happy to have it, and really happy to have had it at a great price. All right, got several more to show you here. This is one of my favorite movies of recent years, and part of it was that the soundtrack was so weird and eerie. And this is the elevated horror film, as they call it, The Witch, which came out a few years ago, directed by Robert Eggers. This was one of my favorite horror films of the 2010s. I have the Blu-ray. I watch it often, and love to have this soundtrack now with, of course, the great Black Phillip on the cover. If you have not seen the movie The Witch, it's pretty amazing. It's really worth your time. All right, replacing another album from my original vinyl collection. This is the Grateful Dead's Wake of the Flood from, I believe, 1974. My old copy of this was on white vinyl, and I'm not really sure why. This copy is on black vinyl. Grateful, get it, to come across this at the local record store. This whole sticker here on the back cover, the track listing, this is a sticker. You can feel the edge, and you could probably peel it off if you wanted to, but I'm not going to do that. But I don't remember my original copy having this. So I don't know what the deal is with that. Do you have Wake of the Flood? And if so, do you have this sticker? I'm just curious what the story of that is. Friends, this one is an amazing find for me, but it also was not cheap. This is the most expensive single record I have ever purchased. Not counting, I have a couple of big box sets with many records that cost more than this. But if you are like me and you know Led Zeppelin 2, you know that the original first pressings were mastered by Bob Ludwig or Robert Ludwig, and this pressing was recalled almost immediately because it was cut so loud that it made cheaper styluses skip. So the record was recalled and recut at a lower volume, and that is the pressing most people have ever heard of Led Zeppelin 2. But the original Robert Ludwig pressings are very much in demand. I happened to find one, and it's not that I happened to find one. I sought it out. I just really, really wanted one. Paid accordingly. This is not a cheap record. Even a Beat to Hell copy will cost you a lot. And this is not a Beat to Hell copy. It's not a great copy, but it's like a G plus kind of a copy. Plays all the way through great. Sounds amazing. It sounds every bit as good as its reputation implies that it will. I'll probably never spend this much on another record, but I'm so glad to have this. This was probably my number one or number two grail of all time. The Louvin Brothers, Satan is Real, is one of the others. And I have another one that I'm going to show you in just a minute. All right, if you're a guy like me of a certain age with a certain sense of humor, I'm sure you love Douglas Adams, the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You may also know that they made a radio series of The Hitchhiker's Guide. I have the whole thing on MP3, and I was very excited to just completely by accident find this 2 LP set of a audio drama. It is not the radio version, but it uses many of the same cast members as the radio version. So it sounds very similar, but if you're as familiar with it as I am, you'll notice that some of the lines have been changed, some of the vocal takes are a little different, but many of the music cues are the same. So it's kind of this weird alternate take. It's a 2 LP set. It is a condensation of the original radio series, and I love this. Don't panic. This great hype sticker here, and it says you have 2 minutes to buy this record. So you have to buy it quickly. But I happened to just come across this at my local record store, And that kind of jogged my memory because I knew they had done that, but I had never actually seen a copy of that before. And I remember they had also done the sequel, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, which you can just barely see here. This is a 1 LP on Hannibal Records. So now I've got both of the records, the Douglas Adams records. So the first one I came across just by accident, and then once I found that one, I had to deliberately go out to Discogs and buy the second, just so I'd have them both. But now I have to show you the most amazing thing, right? Maybe even better. No, it's not better than the Robert Ludwig Led Zeppelins. But if you're a Beatles fan, you know that the Beatles butcher cover is the end-all, be-all. And there's the butcher cover and there's the trunk cover, where early pressings, they put a sticker over it, like a full slick over it. And early pressings, if you like steamed it, you could peel the sticker off. And look at this. I got both. But don't get too excited because this is not an original. This is the fan club reissue. It is official. It's not a bootleg, but it is not a 1966 or whatever year it was copy of this. But I've wanted this cover forever. I'm so glad to have this. And it won't fool anybody on close inspection because if you take it out, this cover is super thin. I have a 1980s reissue of Revolver on Capitol, and the cover is similarly. It's this really thin, glossy. It doesn't feel anything like a real 60s Capitol cover would feel, but it is on red vinyl. I think they said it's purple vinyl, but it looks more red to me. I haven't played it yet, so I don't know what the sound quality is like. But even if this is not an original, I'm really happy to have this. But more exciting to me, let's look at this trunk cover. Because if you know your stuff here, you know that you can identify an original trunk cover by Ringo's black sweater here, which can be seen if you look very carefully, bleeding through the cover. So I'm very excited to say that if you look very closely here, if I can get the light just right, you can see that there is absolutely no black triangle on this copy. So yeah, it's not an original. I mean, it is a real copy. It's not a bootleg, but it's not a first pressing. If I peel this off, there's no butcher cover underneath. But still, I didn't have a copy of this. I've held off buying this over the years because I'm always hoping I'm going to find an actual second state cover, it's called, but haven't done it yet. So this is a placeholder, and it plays well. I'm glad to have it. All right, I just have 3 more that I'm going to show you. And again, I have bought so many more than this because I've started buying some collections, and I'm going to talk about that in a future video, or maybe a video you've already seen, depending on the order I upload these in. But 3 more that I've picked up that I particularly want to call your attention to. This is another album I've dreamed of owning for years. The Velvet Underground and Nico's first album, with the cover designed by Andy Warhol. Not a first pressing, but it is a 1970s reissue, and even those are pretty uncommon. The original pressings, you could peel the banana off, and this one you can't. It's just printed on. But this is on Verve, which is pretty cool, the black Verve label. It sounds amazing, and I don't know why. This was in the bargain bin at my local record store, and it is a great copy. It is right on that VG to VG Plus line. I've played it all the way through. It sounds wonderful. Cannot imagine why this was not on the wall for 30 or 40 bucks, which is kind of what I would expect to pay for a 70s reissue of this album. I paid under 10. So really glad to have that. That's a fantastic find. And just 2 more I want to show you here. 1 more reissue, and this is a second pressing of Bob Dylan's first album. First pressings are extremely rare. Famously, his first album sold about 5,000 copies in its original run, so it's very, very hard to find a first pressing. And this is a second pressing. It's really, really hard to find as well. And I only was able to get this one because it's beat to hell. It is probably I would grade this probably just a G. G for good. Does not skip, but it's got a lot of surface noise. It's a pretty quiet record anyway. It's just him and his guitar. There's no band with him, so it's a quiet record anyway, and then it's in bad condition, so there's a lot of surface noise. This is an album I know very well. I've owned it on CD for years and years and years. I know every note of this album, can sing you every note of this album, can play many of these songs on the guitar. But it's nice to have a vinyl copy. Second pressing, it's very early. And anyway, the very last album I'm going to show you today is not a reissue. This is another one I'm very happy to have. This is a first pressing of Some Girls by the Rolling Stones, first U.S. pressing. And the way you can tell this, one is that the colors of the stripes are a certain way. Later, they were reissued in more colorful stripes. But also, they did not get permission for many of these faces, these celebrity faces, like Lucille Ball's on here and some others. So when they reissued this album, certain faces are just blank. They're just blank, no features at all. So it's nice to have an original copy of this. This is absolutely pristine. There's not a tick hairline, not a scratch, not a pop on this album. Really, really glad to have this. I actually got this in trade at my local record store. I traded some, I forgot even what I traded. Maybe a copy of Pink Floyd The Wall, because I have two of them. I traded a copy of that recently, and this may be of what I got out of it. So really happy to have that, especially for no money out of pocket. And again, got tons more to show you. This won't be the only recent video that recent record find video that we have, but it'll probably be a little while before I do another one. I like to let them build up and do like a nice video like this, just so I can kind of skim the cream and show you the stuff that I'm most interested in. Lots more that is not nearly as, to me, as exciting as those records I just showed you. So please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you've watched all the way through here, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll be back with you soon. Take care.